Greetings, everybody. Today I'm going to do a little bit more of an unusual Ignarism for today, where I'm not really going to display anything, so just enjoy the sights or just, put this off to the side and have something in the background. But today I have something where we're going to be discussing uh, a view of morality, moral nihilism, existential nihilism, and ethics. And for this one, I have kind of typed out a thing discussing all these particular topics. I also got sources, so at the end of the video, you'll see in the description, you can look down there or just any time in the video, you can have a look at where I kind of found some of these things where I discuss about. So, anyway, let's get started, shall we? For a while now, I've become to realize some things about our species that, to some extent, does give me extra thought about the process of man. Humanity is an immoral species, such as the rest of the animals in life that beholds us. How? Well, let me explain. Humanity created a concept only seen by humanity, morality, to use as the baseline of how one should act and behave. However, when everyone has a different idea of what morality is, how can humanity truly be moral? There is a simple answer. We're not. We're anything but moral. Morality is relative. Depending on the region of your group and environment, for example, one man can kill you for your food because he's in a tribe prone to violence and uses such to seize their means to acquire such. Yet the neighboring tribe is more diplomatic. They prefer to talk and partake in commerce to acquire food, and sees that as using trade as a more beneficial source of thriving for not only their tribe but for the greater species that neighbors them as well with other tribes, avoiding violent confrontation. One group obviously will kill for their means, whilst the other one will converse and trade. Their morality is obviously different. Each one of theirs, or both of them, are incorrect in their moral principles. Should we kill the other tribe for their food or trade peacefully? Moral relativism is the idea that there is no universe or obsolete set of moral principles. To describe what that is for anyone who doesn't know. Descriptive moral relativism is also known as cultural relativism, say that the moral standards are culturally defined. Cultural relativism is easily as a reality you exist in. Culture is very relative in comparison to different regions and people. In India, in a broader conversation, Hinduism practices the reverence and value of cows, yet the morality of Muslims in the region are considered lessers and are lynched, attacked, and harassed for eating a supposed sacred animal, which is better to have a ritual of being a sacrificed burger in its afterlife. Moral relativism is on the opposite end of the continuum from moral absolutism, which is say that there is always one right answer to an ethical question, which to a Hindu was to protect a cow even if it kills the victimizer of that animal, will do so, as is their moral obligation. Indeed, to those that adhere to moral relativism would say, win a row, do it as the Romans do. If I were India, I wouldn't be eating beef. I prefer not to be killed over foolish scruples over nonsense about how a cow is somehow a godlike animal, which it is. Which if it is, God is an ugly motherfucker and prone to divine mistakes. Eesh. Metaethical moral relativism states that there are no objective grounds for preferring the moral values, and in one culture over the other, societies make their own moral choices based on their unique beliefs, customs, and practices. And in fact, people tend to believe that right moral values are the values that exist in their own culture, the reality. See in India, when with Hinduism, it is the objective moral ground that where you must protect the cow, yet everywhere else in the world practically they embrace the cow, but as a source of sustenance for their hide, bone, and especially their juicy red meats. Thus, the rejection of the premise of morality. As morality, as long, to me, has seen as a form of authoritarian control, an ideology masked as an objective reality. While the basis of ethics that moral absolutists and moralists overall regurgitate, such as rape is wrong, it is easy for me to agree with, and is irrelevant to me. Of course rape is fucking wrong. However, they make claims such as murder is wrong, yet the next breath they advocate for killing someone or a group over a opposed ideology that offends their moral standard. Morality is hypocritical, is facetious in attempting to become an objective standard for all. It amuses, yet unnerves me. Willing to compromise ethical principle over an emotional reactionary feeling they have in themselves? I almost have pity. I have a personal anecdote, which I will keep characters anonymous, however, is a merited example. I was walking to the bar with a friend, and the conversation of relationship got brought up, which seems normal, yes? Hold. Eventually, this became a hypothetical. My more morally objective friend who puts a scenario, what would you do if your significant partner was sexually harassed? Before I continue, let me say this. Sexual harassment should never be condoned. And yes, you should stop someone from doing so, report it if seen. It is better not only to society, but the individual dealing with it. Not to say you should always be the hero, but it's better for society to peacefully solve these situations and have the best case scenario, not only for the individuals involved, but for society. Now let's continue. Now my friend puts forth a claim based on this view of morality for this hypothetical. Or at least I supposedly think he does think such. I'd be put a gun to the head, put him on the citizen's arrest, and I kill them and they rat me out to police, even when they finish their term in prison if I have a gun. What about any of that is morally acceptable? The sexual harassment, inciting violence, and threatening death / attempting to plot an assassination? In every metric of this rationalist mind, this is absolutely wrong and immoral. In every metric. We have an impassioned argument which went nowhere, as moral claims always will, as there is no weight to them, and I end up in my position with the simple rebuttal, which to anyone with ethics and a rationalist mind would and we would agree with. The sexual harassment is wrong, but not illegal. You cannot use You can use nonviolence to solve. Telling them to leave, or you simply leave with your significant other, or you get a crowd to be around you and deal with the confrontation at hand, making it harder for the harasser to target you. And there's a plethora of other different alternatives to doing so. When you threaten violence, and especially pull a gun on someone, the law will see you as the bad guy, and probably rightfully so, as they should. And the result is you lose the right to own a gun, which you never should have one in the first place if you are going to casually throw it on somebody for, overall a minor infraction in comparison to other felonies that can be enacted, but yet it's still wrong. And also possible fines and indefinite prison time for attempted murder and plotting a murder. The right answer returned to me was truly what made me not only rethink. The answer he did return to me truly was what made me not only rethink morality, but rethink the different issues that night. Fuck the courts, they're wrong then. Because mentioning that the courts will look at the laws and how they're instilled and use that against you, because unfortunately they will, and maybe rightfully so. This is why the premise of morality is inherently immoral. When it has literally been given you the reality of what would happen, is it good to double down on let's kill a motherfucker? Ironically, or maybe an oxymoron, if that's the same, is that the same friend also criticizes Islam on a daily basis to the point of Hitler has levels of rage against them to where they only deserve death besides some of them. This also sounds like the same moral standard of Trump. If he believes about sayings that most of them are criminals and they are rapists, I assume some are good people, which is simply wrong. Not to throw that Hitler, analogies to Trump, but if we want to at least make an example where there is one there. Not that I necessarily use it from time to time, but if we want, but for this example, I do so. You can take more substance stance, even without sources, by merely using the basis of the issues at hand. Hispanics being criminals, end the drug war, and reform the border with new sense technology, more patrolmen, cameras, and other policy proposals that are more rational than a wall. Islamist problem, taking the non-Trotskyist principle. If you want to stop terrorism, start participating in it. End the wars, stop exploiting the Middle East, and divest our military spending to domestic spending. It's a basic but correct rational perspective on the broader issues. How the details are worked out is upon to the open market of ideas. But what of Islam? Is it all the problems of American imperialism and exploitation? To delve into it, Saudi Arabia and Islam and Iran, for example, have the morality police. Saudi Arabia has the Committee of the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice, or the Matawa, or however the fuck you say their crazy weird name. The Matawa is tasked with enforcing Islamic religious law, Sharia, in public places. This includes rules forbidding unrelated males and females to socialize in public, as well as a dress code that encourages women to wear a veil covering all but their eyes. Sounds pretty rational, doesn't it? And in Iran, they have the Gashi Irshad, the Persian for guidance patrols. Jeez, that doesn't sound Orwellian. Supported by the Basish militia, the Gashi el-Sharad are currently the main agency tasked with enforcing Iran's Islamic Code of Conduct in public. Their focus is on ensuring the surveillance of the hijab, mandatory rules requiring women to cover their hair and bodies, and discouraging cosmetics. They are empowering to admonish suspects, imposing fines, or arrest members of the public. But under reforms that comes into things that that comes into force this year, and will soon no longer be able to deny these things due to the criticisms of the West and its people. So I believe that was from 2017, if I am not mistaken. But it's not just them. There's also other also other countries that take part in these types of Sharia immoral policing. Sudan, Malaysia, Burma. There's other countries that also instill these type of things. Islam is no saint. If anything, it's prone to the most violence when it comes to religious extremism seen in the modern days. It's imperative to deal with such unethical ideas and have them be obsolete, as Islam rightfully is, as religion is. The Christians are not innocent in sin. Over the years, the dominant religion in America still yearns for the moral suppression of others, especially in the United States. Many over the years, including recently, have and will continue to use violence as much as Islam can and will to use morally suppressive other views. For example, Robert Daggett, in 2015, a one-time congressional candidate and self-proclaimed Christian minister, Jesus Christ, was arrested and charged for plotting an attack on a mosque and school and kill Muslims. The Gospel Herald shared Daggett's own description, his intent laundering his armor-piercing rounds and boasting a willingness to cut victims to shreds with a machete. How moral of you, huh? Michael Frederick Griffin, in '93 of March, and during an anti-abortion protest, Michael Griffin shot Dr. D.A. Gunn, an abortion provider, 3 times in the back. According to Slate, he shouted, "Don't kill any more babies," and surrendered to police. He claimed to have been radicalized by pro-life activist John Birch, who later justified the murder, saying, "We are all commanded to protect the innocent children." Paul Jennings Hill, in '94, former Presbyterian minister Paul Jennings Hill approached Pensacola Ladies Center, where Dr. John Bayard Brinton was just arriving. Hill opened fire, first murdering the man who had driven Dr. Brinton in hospital, and then the doctor himself. The supporters declared Hill as a martyr. CBS also reported that in an interview before his execution, he boasted that he expressed rewards in heaven and expressed a hope that more will follow his actions, which more did. Another example, as I've named so many, Robert Louis Steer, in 2015, entered a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado and opened fire, killing 3 people and injuring another 9. Very evangelical and obsessed with the world coming to an end, as well as describing a belief that he would do what it is he wanted, as long as he could be divinely forgiven. Documents showed that his religious rhetoric, such as exhortation online, turn to Jesus or burn in hell, and praise to other attacks on doctors who perform abortions, calling the violence God's work, and many more. Religion itself is no saint when it comes to morality, ain't it not? And what of our country? Our country, due to religious doctrine or otherwise, has also created unorthodox views of how we've seen different moral dilemmas. Abortion is still, as of 2018, still very contested, with 43% thinking it is morally acceptable, with 48% thinking it's still wrong. The death penalty, most people in this country at 62% still think is morally acceptable, which I know a few people myself who think so as well. With 33%, by the way, thinking it's wrong. Luckily, I'm one of them. Doctor-assisted suicide. This one is quite interesting. 54% think it is morally acceptable, while 42% think it's wrong. But regular suicide, 20% and 75%, with 20% being morally acceptable. So doctor-assisted suicide seems to be okay, but as soon as you do it yourself, there seems to be some problems, ain't there not, huh? Divorce is 76% morally acceptable and 20% morally wrong, so understandably. Sometimes your partner happens to be a total bastard and you wish you probably didn't get married with him. And stem cell research on human embryos, 66% thinks it's morally acceptable, which I do think so too. It does help out with medicinal science. And then with gay or lesbian relationships, of course, as of recently, 67% of people in this country, along with most people, I think, find it morally acceptable. I don't think it matters either or. But with polygamy, strangely enough, well, to at least me, 19% find it morally acceptable. So where the fuck are the standards? There is none. Abortion is still a contested issue, despite the objective reality that an embryo is not alive and requires to leech off the life force of the mother. It is not alive until the nervous system is viable and functional. Most Americans still yearn for capital punishment, despite the fact that it's never stopped murders, rapes, terrorism, and other societal ills that hurt it. Doctor-assisted suicide is seen as, at least in some part, as acceptable, but as soon as you do it yourself, it's just regular old suicide? Oh no, we can't have that. Cloning animals is apparently wrong, despite the advancements in science and genealogy of animal cloning, along with the abilities to combat industrialized farming using cloned animals or lab-created animals. Polygamy is seen as absurdly immoral, despite that most people have a generally agreement with homosexuals that who cares what you do in a bedroom with your partner? That's your business. Until it's polygamy, then you're a fucked up human being and should be exiled. Americans don't have moral standards. We have moral claims. As we as Americans will look around, especially at everyone around us, making sure to exclude ourselves and put our own moral judgments on them, calling them biblical mentality, revenge head, whatever you label it. Americans love to make moral judgments. Them damn liberals want to take our guns, Bubba. Praise Jesus for that, trying to sinners, give them the damnation. Those outright Nazi scum offending me. They need deplatforming and should be arrested. How dare they? Donald Trump is the great white hope. Donald Trump should be impeached. Antifa are terrorists today, should be killed. Proud Boys beat a tranny. Islam is taking over America. The Bilderbergs are running everything. Need a revolution to save the babies. Bah! All our moral judgments. I hear on a daily basis from people with no understanding on moral claims and how they work, yet paraded to everyone. If they knew, they'd be more articulate about keeping the moral claim more covert within the rhetoric. Let's look at a philosopher I recently discovered, Niccolo di Bonanno, which whilst he rejected not being called a philosopher, has seen philosophy as irrelevant, which I disagree with. Many have used his ideas and perspectives, philosophically, to their own works, as I'm doing so right now. So, Niccolo di Bonanno da Machiavelli, that's his full name. Quite a name, ain't it? He was also a political theorist, a diplomat, a musician, and a writer during the Renaissance period, a central figure in the political scene in the Italian Renaissance. Although he's sometimes presented as a model of moral nihilism, that is highly questionable as he largely signed on moral matters. If anything, he presented an alternative to ethical theories of his day, rather than an all-out rejection of all morality. For example, from his work El Principe, the Prince, describing the arts by which a prince or ruler could retain control of his realm. A new prince has a much more difficult task than a hereditary prince, since he must stabilize his newfound power and build a structure that will endure, and a task that requires the prince to be publicly above reproach, but privately he may require him to do immoral things in order to achieve his goals. He outlined his criteria for acceptable cruel actions and pointed out that the irony in his fact that good can come from the evil actions. Seems very moral view, but provides the example I need. In his work El Principe, or El Principe, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, it's Italian, I'm not versed. Anyway, he states that a prince must at least keep the appearance to be publicly a moral standard to look up to and above criticism. The prince is the objective morality, but of course each prince has different morals. Each prince is not wrong morally when they send their starving serfs to battle an enemy prince with their starving serfs. Or if someone gave them a scruple, they may react by throwing you in a snake pit or drawn and quartered, put up at stake, or burned on a pyre. Or as an ability to excuse immorality by masking it as morality, showing the structure of moralism and how it's used by anyone to mask a moral claim. Back to my personal anecdote. My friend makes an immoral claim to murder/plot a murder of someone by using a moral claim that sexual harassment is wrong. The analogy of the prince is seen, no? So what of my own perspective? I've gone through detail ripping apart current understanding of morality and my personal ideas of why I disregard morality. But what of the replacement? Does having no morality then dictate that there is no right or wrong, or we can do whatever we want? Well, yes and no. This is the idea of moral nihilism, as I was mentioned above with Niccolo. In my personal as a nihilist, I find any objective moral claim to not only be false, but irrelevant and should be disregarded immediately. I have no time for such nonsense, and neither should the rest of humanity, yet our higher intelligence and sentience allows us to ponder these things on a deeper level than even a dolphin. So it may never even be a realistic goal that may come to fruition. But what of the definition of moral nihilism, for those who may not know? Moral nihilism is a meta-ethical view that ethical claims are generally false. It holds that there are no objective moral facts or true propositions, and that nothing is morally good, bad, right, or wrong, etc., etc., because there are no moral truths. This is the only truth that is inherently objective. There is no right or wrong, good or bad. There is no moral objectivity, and everyone's moral claims are inherently false. It differs from moral relativism, which do allow for moral statements to be true or false in a non-objective sense, but do not assign any statistic truth values to moral statements. Moral claims imply motivation internalism, the idea that an individual has motivation to perform an action which they see as morally obligatory, which is false, and therefore so are all moral claims. Moral claims necessarily entail a correspondent reasons claim. Example: if killing babies is wrong, or is true, then everybody, if if killing babies is wrong is true, then everybody has a reason to not kill babies. But this is refuted by a psychopath who sees every reason to kill babies and no reason not to do so. Therefore, all moral claims are thus false. This has also been put forth by J.L. Mackie, who defended this meta-ethical view in his 1977 book, Ethics, Inventing Right and Wrong, which I haven't heard of, but I'm actually going to get. So why? Well, existential nihilism, which begins with the notion that the world is without meaning or purpose, on top of one having no personal meaning. The universe is a cold, bleak thing and does not acknowledge you, nor will it ever acknowledge you, and you are not obligated to understand it. We are merely a byproduct of the processes of chemical reactions over eons of cosmic evolution, and our Earth isn't unique because it's the only one of its kind, which that notion alone is false, with the basis rebuttal of our ever-expanding universe. It's not unique at all. It's a rare exoplanet, and we inhabit it because we're evolved to do so, given the conditions that it has. If there is any meaning, then every individual has not lived up to that meaning, nor will it ever happen. All the variables of reactions that happen to you, from you, because of you, about you, from the environment, etc., will make it so that at any given time, you can be dead, get cancer, someone attacks you, an animal attacks you, get mental illness upon birth, lost an arm and a leg, etc., etc. Humans are a fallible species, and if there was an objective meaning, wouldn't we have an objective purpose that we all feel inside ourselves? I feel different purposes at what I'm doing, but I ain't complaining. It's how I deal with my reality. Even if there was, I'd be utterly irrational. For some purposes, people think is to conquer, and are prone to anger, and for others who care for people. But I don't think some people's objective purpose is to be a victim that is conquering a fellow man, and I don't think mentally ill's purpose is to suffer and have someone take care of every little thing they need because they're unable to sustain themselves. During the Renaissance, to go back to this period, William Shakespeare eloquently summarized the existential nihilist perspective when, in his famous passage near the end of Macbeth, has Macbeth pour out his disgust for life. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player, that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale, told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Because miseries vastly outnumber pleasures. Is happiness impossible? No. Your own form of meaning and path in the cosmic and terrestrial chaos put forth to your perception of this reality is up to you. So what of ethics? Well, let's get into this a little bit before we continue. So there are three categories. Normative ethics, which tell us not only what we ought to do, but also why we do things in some instances that may appear counterintuitive to what we think is an ethical decision would be. Such theories are often called ethical systems because they provide a system that allows people to determine ethical actions that individuals should take. The most common examples of normative ethical theories are utilitarianism. I'm pretty sure I said that right. Utilitarianism. Blah, 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 whatever. This is the core of my moral views. We have a set normative ethics that society has all agreed to adhere to, which is as creating an institute to enforce those ethics. This is why we have police officers, laws, and criminal justice. There are a plethora of things that a society will deem wrong depending on the time and the society. In 100 years, the same society could in fact have different set of ethics, which requires laws to be enforced and people in that society to enforce them. This is why the most usual of crimes like murder, rape, stealing, etc. are generally seen as wrong, ethically, because it is negative impacts on society by bringing unnecessary harm upon it. And for other issues, it is positive, such as organizing an event to feed people, or donating money to a nonprofit, or simply giving change to somebody who may need it. And the second, metaethics. Metaethics does not address how we ought to behave. Rather, metaethics is relating to more of the study of ethical theory of itself. Here, the interest is evaluating moral and ethical theories and systems. For example, moral relativism is a meta-ethical theory because it interprets discussions around ethics. A question is asked within moral relativism is ethical culturally relative? Foul way of discussing moral relativism, which I utterly reject. Applied ethics describes how we apply normative theories to specific issues, usually related to work or belonging to an organization. For example, policies and procedures of organizations or ethical codes of outlaw bikers versus ethical codes of police officers. This is another way of saying moral relativism, a wish-washy way of saying, I have different morals than you, so you're the worst of my morality. This I also reject, but not so strongly. Applied ethics can be, to certain examples, such as a code for police officers, useful. I want a set of ethical standards for my police officers, or else there would be chaos. Whilst I reject the global application of applied ethics, one should argue that having a separate code on top of society's code of ethics can be useful depending on the group and institute. So, let's kind of recap everything that we're getting into. Well, of my philosophy, there is the rejection of morality and the embracement of moral nihilism and existential nihilism. Also, the rejection of moral claims that are relative to the culture, region, and persons. Despite that morality is very well relative, which seems confusing. Didn't I say earlier that I rejected it? Well, yes, but no. Morality is very relative in the sense that, again, moral claims and moral judgments, depending on their culture, region, and person, are distilled depending on how they view morality, which that is very well true and very much reality. But but those claims in themselves, reject. Morality is also a claim of suppression of naturalistic causations of our lives, creating more issues as psychopathy, sociopathy, and schizophrenia, etc. Main example would be for religion. So, what else would I say from this? Well, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Go forth, expand yourself, and fulfill your own meaning. Put forth not only that benefits you, but everyone around you, because collectively we need to cooperate to sustain ourselves, especially in these times of the modern age. Without each other, we are nothing more than the wild beasts of nature that behold us behind the wall facade of civilization that we put forth as advancement due to our evolution of our expanded minds and perseverance. Ethics and law, not morality, is how humanity has progressed and advanced the way we have been able to do so in the last century, which have provided many advancements that have truly benefited our species. This idea must keep going. Religion and moral objectivism should always be challenged at any given opportunity. Morality is merely a construct of man, same with ethics, but unlike ethics, morality is used to suppress and hold ourselves back in order to push for an objective moral standard. We need a standard of ethics, and leave morality for nihilism to destroy the false and weak pedestal it's held up for so long. This has been my position on ethics, a rejection of morality, and embracement of existential nihilism. So, I hope you will look forward to join this, and I hope to also do more thoroughly processed, or at least thought out videos like this in the future, such as on other ideas, like expanding on nihilism itself, or also discussing optimism and my reasons against it, or at least my reasons of challenging it. Pessimism, egalitarianism, socialism, fascism, etc. Nothing's excluded in Ignarism. It's been a while since I did one of these, but I thought, I start off big, or at least come back with a bang. Start off big. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, do all that fun shit, and I'll see y'all in the next one. So peace out.